Sponsored by NordVPN. Hey everyone, have you ever had the urge to cause as much chaos as possible in a dystopic city that is only limited to your own imagination and what you can find laying around in game? Well, I've got the game for you, Streets of Rogue. So, as some of you might have guessed by the title of this game, Streets of Rogue is a roguelike first and foremost, but it's also a bit of an immersive sim. A roguelike ImSim, you say? Well, yeah, we've seen that before, but we're not going to make any immediate comparisons as I want that to be its own video, and also I do not think it is fair to do an apples to apples comparison between the work of a AAA studio known for its immersive sims and one guy in his bedroom. Regardless, Streets of Rogue certainly has that ImSim feel of being able to accomplish tasks in just about any way you want so long as the job gets done, and you're rewarded for not only feats of stealth and pacifism, but also for creative violence and wanton destruction, something that I am a big fan of as it seems too many ImSims actively punish you for your unfettered carnage and only give you sweet bonuses for being sneaky. Now, this is a 2D game, so there isn't really stacking boxes in it, but I'm gonna give it a free pass on that one. Charl! Oh hey, it's been a while. What's up? If this is an immersive sim, why didn't you include it in the tier list? Well, as I said in that video, those were all the ones I could remember at the time, and also, as some of you know, I try to make it a personal policy not to pass judgment on anything that I haven't played myself, which at the time unfortunately included Streets of Rogue. Now that we've got that cleared up, let's talk about the game proper. Streets of Rogue is an ImSim roguelike, as we said before, or perhaps it's a roguelike ImSim. I'm not entirely sure, but I know it's a lot of fun. I started playing the other Friday, and by that Sunday I'd logged a good 12 hours and decided that this video was gonna jump the queue. The premise of Streets of Rogue is that you're in a city where a mayor elected on false campaign promises have done a few dick moves too many, and now the resistance is gonna try and take them down. The game's plot doesn't take itself too seriously and instead gives you a nudge or two about the game's inspirations to try to tell you how to play it. This is less Binding of Isaac or Dead Cells where you've got to try and actively build for a certain skill set to win, and more along the lines of how much trouble can you possibly cause with a set of toys you're given every level. It's literally an end of level statistic to see just how much you've wrecked the mayor's re-election campaign based on the chaos you cause, so you want to cause as much chaos as possible. So first and foremost about the gameplay is that it's got that bread and butter roguelike format with perhaps a little less emphasis on the randomness in the name of it not being an endless slog to get the good stuff. After you configure your settings during your first boot up of the game, which I personally very much appreciate it doing, and then do a tutorial, you're given a handful of characters with their own starting items and abilities, and then are tasked with seeing how far up you can get in the lasagna city before someone else has to try again. Each floor has 2 or 3 quests that you need to do before you can move on up, and they drop stuff that's pretty useful. You're not going to find any soy milk or my reflections here. As you level up in game, you get various abilities or straight up stat increases at the end of each level, which while all randomly chosen from a pool like you do in your roguelikes, you get the option to pick from 3 or 4 of them instead of just being given one, which takes a lot of the frustrating randomness out of the roguelike, as it significantly reduces the odds that you're gonna get a crap ability or just something that isn't very good or suited to what you want to do at the end of a level, and that will make the run an uphill battle. I'm sure anyone that's played a roguelike has had those bad first floors before, and you know how bad that can get for the rest of the run, to the point where sometimes you just reset if you just get garbage items on the first floor. I've never really had to do that in Streets of Rogue. You unlock more dudes by doing certain things during your run, but everything else is done through purchases at your home base. During your runs, you'll get some of those sweet tendees as you level up or do optional quests, and then you can go to various dudes in the resistance base to unlock new traits and item rewards to be added to your respective pools. Some items or better abilities are tiered off, but it's still really nice not to have to slog through a bunch of runs or do a specific thing in game that's very hard to do to get the items that will make your subsequent runs easier and more fun. Something I've noticed overall is that Streets of Rogue is generally easier than your typical roguelike, not so much on the grounds that it's overly forgiving or simplistic, cause trust me, I'm still in the 20s of hours played and I still haven't gotten to a final area yet, but instead in how a lot of the negative tropes associated with roguelites, such as being a slave to bad RNG or needing to climb over a mountain of unlocks before you get to do the zany stuff that makes the game genuinely fun, are mitigated through the previously mentioned elements of how things are unlocked and a few other things. For starters, if you're just set on getting to the end, you can straight up skip floors you've already mastered. If you completed an an area with 5 different characters, you can just use the other elevator in the main base to save yourself the trouble of having to do an entire run from the very beginning and just pick up at your highest floor. This does have setbacks though. You're probably not going to be able to do your character's big quest, and then there's the matter of you're going to be starting in the late game areas with none of the levels and items you might have acquired over the course of all those previous floors you skipped. This could be fine if you're starting with a character that already has a solid loadout like the soldier, or disastrous if you're starting with a weaker character like the bartender or the hacker. Although come to think of it, the hacker might benefit from not having to climb up all those floors. Then there's another way you can make your life easier: loadout bonuses. If you've already dropped a significant amount of tendies on a good number of perks and pickups to add to your pools, you can talk to the soldier nearby the starting elevator at the hideout and choose from a random assortment of items from your rewards pool to take into the run. You can pick only one of them, but if you're flush for tendies, you can just keep re-rolling these items until you can start with something really good. As someone who's played a lot of roguelikes, trust me, a single good drop at the beginning of a run can and will make your run. I'm all for this stuff because, like I said earlier, there isn't too much of an easy mode, it's just more of a mitigating RNG crap. If you really wanted an easy mode, you can always just go over to the Mutators person in the hideout and activate all the ones that make the game easy, like infinite ammo, better weapon durability, or other stuff like that, but more on the Mutators in a minute. Streets of Rogue plays a lot differently between the characters that you run as. It's much less of a, okay, Judas is a bit of a glass cannon to start with, whereas Maggie is slow and tanky, but they all transform into a death ball by the end of the run by the time you're at the chest. And it's more along the lines of the game is genuinely different with different objectives and methods for getting stuff done. This is in part because each character has an optional big quest that they can do every floor for an experience bonus and probably something good at the end of the run when I get there someday. Perhaps it's just better if I gave you a few examples. So the simplest and most straightforward of all these classes would be the soldier. If you're used to the old-fashioned bullet heli, kill all the stuff roguelikes, this is a good place to start for you. The soldier starts with a fully loaded machine gun, some armor, landmines, grenades, and the extremely useful door detonators along with a kill immunizer, which is an item that gives you a little ammo in all your guns for every few kills that you make. The soldier has a pretty high gun stat and can make short work of most rooms full of dudes, which you're gonna need because your big mission on every floor is to destroy all the power generators because reasons. Setting one of those things to blow is gonna turn all the people in whatever area the generator is in against you, so you'd better be ready for that. Most, if not all, the money you're gonna be collecting as a soldier is going to go right into the ammo vending machine or in search of health pickups, and you'll rarely have any dudes with you because friendly fire is certainly a thing in Streets of Rogue. Now for the complete opposite of the soldier, we've got the hacker. The hacker is special in how, while all the other classes need a special pickup to hack into something and must hold still to do it, the hacker has his laptop, which isn't even an item, it's a passive ability, which allows him to hack essentially anything with a power source, and you can do a whole lot more than just open doors as the hacker. Y'all better go catch those refrigerators. The hacker's big quest is to infect every floor with malware, which is simple enough. Just hack into literally any computer on the floor and hit the install malware prompt. Problem is, that floods the level with high-powered cop bots that are now all actively searching for you. And you aren't exactly much of a fighter, so you'd best run the hell out of there once it's uploaded. In fact, I found it's a very bad idea to do the big quest for the hacker any earlier than you absolutely are ready to leave the level. At least all the robots are hackable themselves, but we'll get to that in a sec. Then, in something that's entirely different from the other two, you've got the mobster. The mobster starts with a high durability baseball bat and 2 friend phones that will summon 2 more earners to your side. The mobster's big quest is to go to every last vendor in-game and convince them to enter a lucrative revenue split deal with them, and if they don't want to do it from the outset, you've got some advanced negotiation techniques at your disposal. They're able to talk to people that they've previously attacked, and it's also really easy to learn how the intimidation mechanics work as the mobster, since you'll be doing a lot of it, which, just in case you didn't get that, all characters can actually do intimidation instead of whatever the quest is to make something happen. The mobster just does it as their bread and butter. You'll also probably learn through this that you don't have to kill every neutralized target, and you can just convince them to leave the level. The mobster gets a lot of money from his business dealings at the start of each floor, but they've also made a commitment to making regular contributions to the police union retirement fund, so it's not all fun guns and games and free money. You'll be relying on your goons a lot as a mobster, as you aren't exactly the tankiest dude in the roster, and you're gonna be finding that a lot of your money is spent going down to the loadout machine to get more friend phones, or to the vendor to find more healing items for your dudes, cause in case you didn't know, if you give any of your followers as any character a healing item, they'll just use it and heal themselves up, allowing you to keep dudes for longer and not have to keep on replacing them. And then there's like everyone else. Just about every character in Streets of Rogue plays differently, and they all got something cool going on. The bartender has an item that can turn nearly anything into a cocktail and must serve 5 beverages per floor, but unfortunately doesn't have much else going on for him. The vampire has essentially free health everywhere and ignores security cameras, but also has to go looking for the werewolf, possibly the deadliest enemy in the game short of the killer robot. And the gorilla is, well, a gorilla. You get the idea. By the way, if any of these aren't cool enough for you, you can always just make your own classes and see what happens there. And as you might have guessed from some of the classes you've seen, stealth is entirely possible in Streets of Rogue, but it's not so much creeping around as it is setting off distractions, being quick with what you need to get. Most enemies will only be able to see you when their sprite is looking in the right general direction that like you're currently in relative to them, and they can hear stuff like firing off a gun or breaking their stuff. Luckily for you, that's something that can be used to your advantage. Use a loud noise to get everyone away from what you need to steal, and get in and get out without anyone noticing that you took it. Alternatively, there's a whole bunch of stuff to assist with sneaking about, such as lockpicks, wall bypassers, windows cutters, and silencers for your firearms, alongside level up perks that make stealth generally easier to use, such as the silent melee option. And if you want to play as a thief, you get a lot of these perks right from the beginning. And to round it all out, we've got those previously mentioned mutators. Want to have your guns be real good? Real bad? You want to have those crazy events happen on the last level of each floor to happen on every level of every floor? You can do that. You can mix up the tile sets. You can have all sorts of crazy stuff happen, but I personally haven't messed around with mutators too much, as I want to get to the end of the game proper vanilla before I start messing with the core game, and since it's a roguelike, that's anywhere between another 10 to 30 hours away depending on the grace of RNGesus. You can activate these at any time you want. Just go to HQ, and based on how many things there are, you can get things pretty broken pretty fast. So at this point, you've probably heard me reference Tendees as some sort of currency in-game a few times now, if I remember to read my script right. What's up with that? Well, in lore, the mayor of Streets of Rogue has banned chicken nuggets, and now they've become a hot commodity that is given out as a reward for doing bonus quests or leveling up, which can be spent on upgrades and loadout bonuses. I, for one, think we should put ourselves at the top of this trade by making the Tendees ourselves. Time for a cooking segment! But first, let's take a quick second to thank our provider of the Tendees and sponsor of this video, NordVPN. NordVPN's actually turning 10 years old this month. That's 10 years of giving you a secure tunnel on your devices that lets you browse safely, 10 years of helping you keep your personal data away from weirdos whenever you're on the public Wi-Fi and beyond, and 10 years of helping you get around region locking so that your internet can be free and open as it was intended to be. Nord's been at this for a while, so they've got you covered on just about any device you can think of. PC, Mac, both iOS and Android mobile devices, Linux, heck, even smart TVs can use Nord. And you don't have to split hairs over which device gets to be safe from ne'er-do-wells lurking around the university common area's Wi-Fi, because one NordVPN account gets you protection for 6 different devices. To celebrate NordVPN's 10th birthday, go to nordvpn.com/charlatanwonder and get the 2-year plan with an exclusive deal plus 1 month free and a bonus gift, risk-free, with NordVPN's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's right, if for any reason you are not satisfied with NordVPN services within 30 days of purchase, they'll refund you your money just like that. But they're confident that won't be the case. So come on down to nordvpn.com/charlatanwonder and start browsing better in 2022 today. Now let's get into them Tendees. First and foremost, if you want to get the good stuff, you gotta prepare yourself in advance. I'm talking optimally the night before, or at the very least the morning of, if you're gonna be cooking them up. Thaw your chicken breasts if you need to, and let them drain on a paper towel lined plate for a sec to get rid of all the loose water. Now, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Taking a look at just about any label on packaged chicken will tell you that they use chicken broth to plump up the breasts and make them larger than they actually are, so that companies can sell it for you at a higher price based on weight. We want to get rid of that usually about 10 to 15% chicken broth solution, because it makes the chicken take much longer to cook, which makes it dry and rubbery in the end, and we don't like that. How do we do this? By pressing them out. So take your chicken breasts and cut off any dangly bits or fat, and then slice them into thickest strips. I like to go once diagonally across the breast and then slice along my initial cut so I get decent sized strips without having any overly small or thin ones. Once you've got all your breasts cut up, I used 3 here, lay them out on the cutting board and liberally salt them with iodized or kosher salt, whichever you are feeling. Then transfer them salted side down onto a half sheet pan that's lined with at least 2 or 3 layers of paper towels. Go ahead and salt the other side of the strips now, put a couple layers of paper towels on top of those strips, and then place another half sheet pan on top of the strips to form a pan and chicken sandwich. Toss this into the fridge, and if you want to be savvy and also not ruin your fridge's organization, put all the stuff that was already in whatever part of the fridge the trays are going into on top of the trays for maximum filler removal, and also to use the weight to press your strips into a uniform size so they all cook at about the same rate. Now, one last thing we should do the night before is get our breadcrumbs ready. You can buy these at the store if you really want to, but who goes to the store to spend money on something that's easily made at home? Take about a 1/3 to a 1/4 loaf of bread, preferably one that's getting a bit stale, and start ripping it up into little bits and putting those bits into the food processor, like this one that's an attachment for my hand blender. Something like this hand blender is a lot cheaper and more versatile than just a plain old food processor, and I'd highly recommend them. My hunk of bread here took 2 or 3 go-rounds in the processor, and for each load you're going to want to put in a heaping teaspoon of flour and a bit of salt to account for the moisture that's in the bread, because even stale bread still has some water in it, and that'll make your crumbs all mushy. We don't want that. Go ahead and pulse your food processor until you got as fine of a grain as you want, and then pour that out onto a parchment-lined baking tray or right into a container if you're not feeling the toasting. Optionally, if you want your tendies to be extra crunchy, you can preheat El Horno to 225 degrees of freedom heat units, or as low as your oven will go, and then toast them for 15 to 30 minutes. I want a crunch that'll survive even being reheated in the microwave, so I'm pulling these out for a whole 45 minutes, but be warned, your tendies are gonna be more of a doo-doo brown than a golden brown if you do this. They'll still taste great with that big crunch. Once the toasting is done, or if you didn't do it at all, put all the crumbs straight into a container that's ready for breaded chicken strips, or if you want extra fine crumbs, you can run them through the food processor again after drying them out, which will result in less crunch, but even more efficient coverage from the crumbs, allowing you to single bread the tendies without having to worry about gaps in the coverage. Okay, here we are, the night of the tendies. Our chicken and crumbs are good now, so it's time to start the dredging and breading. It would be a good idea to take your chicken out of the oven and change out those paper towels, as those things are probably soaked right about now. They are also pretty dried out, so probably a single paper towel on the bottom of your tray will be fine. We've got a lot of stuff to prep on the counter right now, so let's get some of those things prepped and clear up the space. First order of business is a dredge. Get 2 cups of flour as a base and then add your spices. I go with a 3-to-1 ratio of spices here, being 3 tablespoons of Lawry's, 2 tablespoons of paprika, 1 tablespoon chili powder. Optionally add some basil and parsley if you want to be fancy, and some cayenne if you want to be spicy. Okay, dredge is done. Now let's get to the egg wash. This is laughably easy. Just beat at least 6 eggs and put them into a container next to the dredge. Done. Finally comes the breadcrumbs, and look at that, we already did it, so we're good to go. Maybe give the crumbs a little tossing inside the container to make sure that all the little bits haven't settled to the bottom, and then arrange everything. All right, it's showtime. Place your chicken on one side, your 3-step coating in the middle, and then the raw meat safe cutting board on the far side of your prep counter. Pro tip is to keep a little fork in the dredge and crumb containers that'll not only help you get proper coverage on your tendies without ruining your wet hand, dry hand, but will also help you to agitate them between strips so that you don't end up with overcompacted, hard to coat dredge and crumbs. Now comes the slow part. Take your strips one at a time. Coat them in the dredge with one hand, drop them into the egg wash without that hand touching the egg solution, turn it over with the other hand, and then use that other hand to drop the egg-coated chicken strip into the crumbs, making sure not to touch the crumbs. Now take that first hand that is still dry and use it to coat the egg strip of chicken in breadcrumbs. This is what's called wet hand, dry hand, if you haven't heard of that before, and will save you a lot of headache and hand washing. Now, since I'm hunting for that crunch, I'm going to be double breading these tendies, which means that once I'm done egg washing the strips and putting them in the crumbs, I put the breaded strip back into the egg wash and then bread them in crumbs again. The amount of breadcrumbs I got here let me get about 15 strips double breaded, and that's more than enough for me. Give your strips some time in the fridge when they're all done to let them absorb the spices a bit and also have the crumbs adhere better, and then it's time for the crazy stuff. All right, final stretch, here we are. Get that high-walled saucepan, fill it a couple inches deep with oil. Place a frying thermometer / candy thermometer in the saucepan and turn on the heat. This is gonna take a sec to get up to at least 350 degrees of freedom heat units, so let's go over fryer safety while we're waiting. Never fill the pan all the way up, and always make sure to leave space to account for the displacement of objects you will be putting in the pan. Never let any part of the pan, handle, or otherwise hang over the edge of the cooktop where it can be bumped into by anyone or anything. And while we're at it, let's mitigate risk factors by keeping children, animals, and/or stupid adults the hell out of the kitchen while oil is being heated, because grease burns are very, very bad. Also, have a thing of baking soda open and ready and a pot lid within arm's reach at all times to extinguish and then smother out any fires that might arise. And never use water on an oil-based fire. We're also never going to let the fryer leave our sight so that we can keep an eye on the temperature and never have that fire start in the first place, because the best fire to deal with is the fire that never happens. Okay, oil's heated, let's go. Now lower your strips into the fryer one at a time, being sure to never break the surface tension of the oil, and then gently let them go. These are going to take 4 to 5 minutes each, but you need to be mindful of the temperature, as the act of putting room temperature objects into hot oil will cause the temperature to go down outside of the cooking range, so you'll need to give the fryer a minute or so to heat back up between batches. Give them a turn after about 2 minutes, and then pull them out and place them on a wire rack with paper towels underneath it to catch the excess grease as it comes off. I find it's not a good idea to put the paper towels on the rack, because then the tendies will just soak in their own juices through the paper towel and you won't get the crunch. Repeat until all your tendies are cooked and you've done it. You've seized the means of tendie production. If you're wondering what else I was doing while making these, I was just whipping up some baked fries to go with this as I continue my quest to reverse engineer the Gordon Biersch garlic fries, and if I ever get it, I'll be sure to tell you guys. Now that's it. Remember to kill the heat on your pan and then carefully move it as far back as possible, and do not handle it until the thermometer reads that the oil is back down to room temperature, and then dispose of it in the trash, not the sink. Now let's get back to Streets of Rogue. Let's talk about what really makes Streets of Rogue pop for me. The chaos. Murphy's Law is in full swing in Streets of Rogue, and anything that can happen will happen. Half the time when you're just out and about, people are just gonna start going at it and then things start exploding. And that isn't even when the end of the level effects are in place. Thief NPCs will steal stuff and the NPC they stole from will attack them, but also they'll hit a bunch of other dudes in the process, and before you know it, the whole floor is infighting. Cops will catch people doing illegal stuff and suddenly half the force is massacring the level. Oh yeah, and people can turn into werewolves, that just happens. What's even better is that there's a whole lot of chaos that you get to cause. And here's a few of my favorites, because there's no way I can effectively catalog it all. The first of my favorite ways to cause chaos is something I learned about early on playing as a soldier. The soldier's starting item, the door detonator, doesn't lock you out of all the actions you can do on a door once it's placed and counting down. It'd certainly be a bad idea for you to try and open a door after you've placed a detonator on it, because you'll die. It'd be a shame if anyone else tried to open it too. Since you're able to still interact with the doors, you can knock on the doors to get someone to come and open it up for you, but they won't let you in, and it's a perfectly valid strategy to place a detonator on the door, knock on it, and then run the hell away as your mark opens the door, but also the walls around the door too. And if that wasn't chaotic enough for you, you can always try to learn what's in the syringe rotation through experimentation. Syringes work very much like pills in The Binding of Isaac. You get them as drops or from various stores to start, and you have no idea what each of them do. There is an ability that reveals all of them that the bartender starts with, and there are also syringe identifiers for individual syringes, but that's not very fun. The real way to figure out what all these syringes do is to go outside of a large building full of dudes and start injecting them right into the AC unit outside the building and see what happens as it's aerosolized through the vents in all the buildings. You can have anything happen from people getting poisoned, having electrifying touch, and killing each other as they try to run out the door through static shocks, have their health regenerate, become invincible, become invisible, or they just die from sulfuric acid being pumped through the vents. Good fun. And of course, you can do a little prison rioting. All you gotta do is take a hack tool and maybe a little brute force to get your way to the computer and let everyone out of their cells. This can get pretty wild as there's like 8 dudes in the jails, or even more wild when you break all the gorillas out of the lab. For even more chaotic results, you can try mixing this with the rage serum in the vents and watch the fighting spread to the entire level. And remember how the hacker got a bunch of robots sicked on him every time he did his big quest? Well, the robots can be hacked too, and when they do, they'll start start attacking literally everyone in their range. The swinging range of the robots is wide enough to where other robots defending themselves will likely hit other non-affected robots, and with a couple well-timed hacks, you can have all the cop bots take themselves down along with half the level's buildings while they're at it. If you haven't figured it out by now, the only thing that will consistently happen in Streets of Rogue is that things will get wild pretty fast. I find that this means that while it's good to learn your movements, shooting, item builds, and all that good stuff, learning how to roll with all the weird stuff that happens is a far more valuable skill to have. Being opportunistic when it comes to things randomly exploding and fights breaking out is often a better strategy to get further up into the city than just being really good at shooting dudes. What I really love about all this chaos is that not only for the manic giggling fits it inspires me to have, as half the level burns down thanks to a poorly aimed shot, is that all these little systems in the game are working together and accounting for each other to allow for the really wild stuff to happen. Sure, you can't stack boxes in Streets of Rogue, but it has some of the best emergent gameplay I've seen in recent years based on just how much the game allows to happen. Most games call it quits at like fire propagation and stacking boxes, but in Streets of Rogue, you can watch what happens when random effects commingle, or when a thief tries to rob a mafioso in front of the police and suddenly a 3-faction war breaks out in downtown. Or just go level up the hacker's ability to make any hackable object into an explosive device and just see what happens. Streets of Rogue is definitely an immersive sim, just not the kind you were expecting. I know we associate ImSims with first-person gameplay, being heavily story-driven and all that good stuff, but Streets of Rogue makes a case for the loose interpretation of an ImSim while focusing more on the interactions and player freedoms that make us like ImSims in the first place. Yeah, sure, procedural generation and top-down fighters, especially roguelikes, aren't for everyone, but it's a nice break from the usual trappings of an ImSim. We're spending more time lurking in vents than we are doing cool tricks. But wait, there's more! You know how you would make Streets of Rogue even more chaotic? Co-op. I haven't really had a chance to properly get into this yet as I have no friends and my wife is very busy with grad school, but Streets of Rogue offers both local and online co-op where you and a few of your friends can tear the city down together and maybe do something about that evil mayor while you're at it. But if that's not your thing, workshop support definitely will be. I love it when games have full workshop support on Steam, and I can't think of a better game to have it than an ImSim roguelike. I haven't cracked the surface of the workshop goodies just yet as I still want to finish a vanilla game and then play with the baked-in mutators first, but what I've seen so far offers stuff like custom campaigns, more jibs, custom characters, and even new tile sets if you're feeling it. Dev Matt Dabrowski's been pretty good at supporting the game since its launch in 2019, and from what I've seen, that support includes supporting mods. If you're feeling more intended content though, there is a new character pack along with the OST if you want to snag those in addition to the purchase of your game. Character pack's not enough for you? Fret not. Streets of Rogue 2 is in the works, and if you're willing to be patient, it should be here sooner or later. Based on the update post Matt made recently, it looks like a lot of cool stuff is going into the sequel, so definitely keep it on your radar while you're playing the first game. And trust me, the first game's probably gonna get you quite a few hours. So my final thoughts on Streets of Rogue are: buy it. It's great. Don't wait for a sale. It's only 20 bucks and it's a roguelike, so you're definitely going to get your money's worth. It's really interesting to see an ImSim roguelike hybrid, especially from an indie developer, and I have to say, Matt pulls it off. I definitely say play it with a controller if you got one handy, and take the time to play around with other classes that you might not think you'd like, because you might find some pretty good cheese strategies that make it worth your while. So that's gonna do it for us today. I gotta be honest and say I wasn't expecting to go on about this game this much, and it really clicked with me. I think I'm gonna go play some more of it right about now. In the meantime, if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and do the elaborate ritual to get my videos in your feed as soon as they go live. If you want to help me make more videos that are bigger and better, you can mosey on over to patreon.com/CharlatanWonder, where your pledge gets you all sorts of cool benefits like the full recipe for those tendies and early access to videos. It's cool if you can or won't though. I'll still be making these videos as best I can no matter what. Special thanks to our sponsor NordVPN, and until we see each other again, be sure to stay safe, stay indoors, bundle up and wear your mask when you gotta go out, wash your hands, and enjoy this cat video. Oh no. Oh no. Someone is in my spot on the couch. He put his fur all over it even though I just vacuumed the other day. You got anything to say for yourself? Do you just not fear anything? You're just sitting right here with the spray bottle? He's making moves. Now, like when I was having dinner over here, he like jumped up right onto the spot and was just looking right at me like, I'm the daddy now. He's hanging out with the spray bottle because he thinks he's not afraid of it anymore. Is that the case? Oh, Mommy's got the bottle. You know what else? Daddy's got the bottle. This boy is fearless. I gotta get a shot of this.